Throughout prison life, you get accustomed to that violence. It becomes daily. It's a daily routine. It's part of the monotony of everyday life. I mean, a stabbing or two is part of daily life. You went a day without a stabbing or a cutting. That was remarkable. This was synchronized. This was methodical. This was planned. This particular gang started to run up in these shacks and literally pull the guards out and start pounding on them. And they had no weapons. It was just purely fist and attack. And they yoked them up, pulled them out, and just stomped them out.
Can inmates stay safe from unpredictable violence in prison? Imagine being in a place where danger can pop up at any moment without warning. That's what life inside a prison can sometimes feel like. Violence in correctional facilities is a serious issue. It includes physical assaults, sexual violence, and even homicides. These incidents happen often enough that safety is a constant concern. Many factors make violence unpredictable. Overcrowding is a big problem. When too many inmates are packed into a small space, tensions rise. Staff shortages also play a role. When there are not enough guards to watch everyone, violence can erupt without quick intervention. The environment of confinement itself can add to the risk. Stress, frustration, and anger are common among inmates, and these feelings can lead to sudden fights or attacks. Certain groups of inmates are more vulnerable. Younger inmates, those with mental disabilities, and people not connected to prison gangs are often targeted. They might be assaulted or exploited because they are seen as weaker or easier targets. This constant threat makes many inmates stay hypervigilant, which can take a toll on their mental health. Some inmates join gangs for protection, but that can lead to more violence rather than less. Prison systems try to prevent violence through several methods. They use classification systems to separate high-risk inmates from those who are less likely to cause trouble. Proper classification helps reduce conflicts. Staff training is also essential. Well-trained guards can better spot signs of trouble and respond quickly. Increasing staff levels helps improve supervision and safety. Many facilities implement violence prevention programs. These include conflict resolution classes, mental health support, and programs that encourage positive interactions among inmates. Physical changes like better lighting, removing blind spots, and designing safer housing units also help. Despite all these efforts, complete safety is hard to guarantee. Inmates, unpredictable behavior, and the stresses of prison life mean violence can still happen suddenly. Lockdowns and restrictions are sometimes used to control outbreaks of violence, but these can increase tension and lead to more conflicts. Maintaining safety involves balancing security measures, inmate management, and efforts to help inmates rehabilitate. While prisons work hard to protect everyone, the reality is that violence remains a challenge. It requires ongoing attention, resources, and constant adjustments. So, can inmates stay completely safe from unpredictable violence? Not entirely. But with classification systems, enough staff, supervision, and prevention programs, prisons aim to lower the risks and make the environment safer for everyone.
Greetings and salutations. I'm Victor DeSordi, and welcome to my channel at 28 to Persevere. Thanks for watching. At the end of this video, smash that like button, subscribe if you haven't already, and share this video among the many others I have made available on my channel. Thank you very much. In today's video, I want to talk about a topic that I've gone into detail about numerous times throughout my videos. Contextually, most of my videos revolve around this topic. The topic I'm speaking about is violence inside the prison system. Violence in general is rampant throughout prison, and throughout prison life, you get accustomed to that violence. It becomes daily. It's a daily routine. It's part of the monotony of everyday life. You become desensitized to it, basically. You become numb because you see it every day. And it comes in all types of formats. Violence in general, it's a universal concept in prison that you learn to understand quite quickly. I mean, the reality that you're dealing with is a reality that consumes you and your thinking. And that violence has reverberating effects long beyond the wall once you come home, because you harbor that baggage, you harbor that inside you. You bore witness to tremendous amounts of violence, and I know personally the violence that I saw single-handedly. I believe truly, it affects me to this day. I mean, there are times in my life now that I think about it, it just pops up in my brain. I mean, a certain image projection of something that'll remind me of something that I experienced personally throughout my time in prison. And it does have long-lasting effects to you. The residual effect is obviously not, you can't even debate that. I mean, it's part of the reality of your life. And a lot of people talk about the fact that violence. There has to be obvious violence prevention programs inside the prison system that are mandatory for prisoners to take, and that is true. There is. And if you don't take it, obviously you'll lose certain privileges. Of course, if you choose not to take these type of programming, because they are mandatory to a lot of prisoners, especially violent offenders, they have to then be subjected to the loss of certain privileges. Maybe they're on the family reunion program, so they no longer participate, or they have access to the yard, and maybe that's limited. I mean, there's other various factors and things to consider. But these violent prevention programs, I mean, in all honesty, are farcical in theory, and honestly, not proactive or practical in reality. Because I mean, the nature of life in prison obviously is horrific, and the violence is illustrated every day to you in detail. And I've gone into quite extensive detail about violence inside the prison systems, and I've talked about it a lot in my videos because it's a topic that I believe needs to be exposed and needs to be talked about, because that type of violence stays with an individual, as I've spoke about in detail also in the prison videos that I've spoken about my experience. I mean, throughout the 28 years of my incarceration, the violence that I bore witness to um, is really insane. It's really something that the average Joe or Jane could never truly comprehend unless you walked in my shoes and saw the things I saw. And a lot of guys inside, I mean, that affects them all differently. I mean, we're all individuals, and contextually, we process things differently. And the way that we filter out those negative thoughts, or the horrific nature of the life we lived, comes in all different ways. And a lot of guys, that have gone through the prison system environment, especially the prisons I was in, um, that type of violence stays with them and affects their way of life once they're out and about in the world beyond the wall. A lot of them just can't process the world, and their response to it perhaps is violent, because violence is violence. I mean, it's something that you get accustomed to every day. You're numb to it. I mean, you become completely desensitized to it. You see it every day, and it's just like, okay, well, that's just the monotony of life inside. I mean, that's part of the routine. It's part of what you see. It's part of what you go through every day. I mean, when you see a common fisticuffs, you don't blink an eye. You just keep it moving. I mean, a stabbing or two is part of daily life, especially throughout my time in the Auburn Correctional Facility. I mean, you went a day without a stabbing or a cutting, or yeah, I saw it or heard about it. I mean, that was remarkable. I mean, you couldn't even comprehend that that was actually even possible, because violence was so rampant inside the prison system, especially in the Auburn Correctional Facility in upstate New York. I mean, if you went a day without violence, it was like a day without sunshine in a sense. You see it every day. I mean, you bore witness to it. You learn to be accustomed to it. I mean, you just had to bob and weave and try to avoid it the best you could, or you would engage in it in some form or fashion. Perhaps you were forced to do it. And somebody attacked you because they didn't like the way you moved that day, or you looked at somebody sideways and they didn't like the way you looked at them, or the way you carried yourself. They thought you thought yourself you were a badass, so you were going to try it, and see how badass you really are. I mean, it's just the reality of the life inside. And I've heard people talk about the classification systems. Certain prisons have classification systems where they segregate the most violent within the general population. They segregate them away from the general population so they can't impose that type of will upon other prisoners. And that's another one. That's it's a system that I don't believe really minimizes it or nullifies any type of violence, because it is so rampant. I mean, violence inside the prison system is something that it happens at all the time. And these types of classification systems are arbitrary and capricious to a large extent. They really don't do anything, and they don't actually nullify anything. I mean, from my experiences, violence is so rampant that the guards are exposed to it constantly also. I mean, guards are attacked and they do a lot of the violence themselves. I mean, they encourage it. And of course, that goes, completely unexposed to the general population. But in the reality of life inside, I mean, when that type of life becomes your daily grind, that's all you become to know. That you associate the way you move with the violence around you. You think about everything you do, from the simple ask of a typical task of going outside and just walk in the yard. You got to be aware of everything around you because something might pop off, and if you're not aware of it, and you don't play the wall fast. Uh, your head might get blown off and all. In all intents and purposes, because this is the reality of life. When you go to the showers, you better be aware of the next man next to you or what's going on in that environment, because violence happens quite often in the showers. I mean, I've seen a lot of crazy stuff happen. I've seen a lot of violence in all types, and the facet of violence in general. It's a form of discussion. I mean, it's something that needs to be talked about, because that type of form, a lot of people, they wonder about it. They're like, how did this guy go through that and come out the other side? And how did he come out? What type of person is he now? What was he like prior to going to prison? I mean, I know personally, me, I was 19 years old when I went to prison, so I was a kid. And I wasn't violent prone. I wasn't the type of kid who would throw down and bully people or anything of that nature. I look down upon people like that, and I still do to a large extent, because I understood where that led, and and where that came from inside you, the insecurity that a person harbors. In prison, you have to be aware of everybody around you and how they're thinking, and why they're engaging in the violence that they're engaging in, and you have to study human nature, and you have to be aware of that behavior and how contextually people process that information, and how they respond to the world around them based on the violence that they see. So, I understand that a lot of the opinions that I've heard from people, they don't really understand that these classification system, these violent prevention programs, they don't do much of anything. They really don't. I mean, a lot of them are just tax write-offs to a large extent, and that's something else that's not taken serious, because a lot of these guys that go out of prison, they're not the same as they were when they came in. I mean, it's impossible to be that way. I take a lot of pride in my resilience. I take a lot of pride in my ability to process information, and then to calmly respond to the world around me without acting in an irrational fashion, spontaneously, violently so. Because I know that where that leads to is a self-destruction, and it destroys everything you love around you, and you hurt everybody that ever cared for you. And I refuse to do that. So it's like, this reality of prison life, the violence around you, is a topic that should be addressed, should be talked about. Uh, I have no qualms about talking about it, because I believe that it opens eyes. And, when you see this firsthand, perhaps you can see it through my mind's eye. Hopefully, I can paint a picture for you so you can understand this world that I lived in, and how that world is very relevant to the world beyond the wall. The violence that you see every day outside. I mean, there is a relevancy, and it all correlates to a large extent. And the guys that have done time inside and that are home, they take that baggage with them. As I stated previously, they take that baggage with them, and the way they process the world around them, they literally reflect upon the world that they lived in prior. Prison world, which is completely alien to the world beyond the wall. It's completely foreign, and everything, every aspect of life and living. There's an existence in prison that's predicated on that survival mechanism, survival inside your head, and that type of survival mechanism isn't part of daily life, nor should it ever be in the civilized society beyond the wall. But I was asked recently by somebody, some of the craziest things I ever saw in prison, and violently speaking. I mean, they wanted to know, like, you know, it was some of the most violent, crazy things you've seen. I'm not so much horrifically violent, but just violence in general, like crazy. And one thing always comes to mind, I'll never forget it, was a riot that took place at the yard, and it wasn't necessarily a riot that you see commonly throughout the prison system, prisoner riots, whatever gang on gang it was, or whatever. This was actually a riot where a gang in particular set it off on guards. And what made it so unbelievable and incredible to witness was the fact that this was synchronized. This was methodical. This was planned, and this was an incredible display of just being meticulous in how they did it. I mean, at a certain time throughout the yard where everybody was there. I mean, we had maybe five, six, seven, 800 men in the yard at the time. A certain gang literally got together in a sense, and they popped off on various guards that were perhaps guards walking in the yard at a particular time. Usually they walk in pairs, so they were attacked in pairs. They ran up in the booths. There's little booths. There's little like these guard shacks that they have throughout the prison system within the yards, and the guards usually stay in the shacks and they monitor the movements in the yard through the shacks. Some of the guards walk the yard and they have their sticks and whatever, and they walk to monitor, but a vast majority of them stay in these shacks that are located in various parts of the yards. And this particular gang started to run up in these shacks and literally pull the guards out and start pounding on them. And they had no weapons. It was just purely fist and attack. And they yoked them up, pulled them out, and just stomped them out. I mean, this went on, and this popped off all at once. And one popped off here, and this one popped off there, and it just went throughout the yard and this synchronized time, and it was set off. I mean, it was wild, and the various guards were attacked, beaten, to the point that the guards up top of the prison in Auburn on the roof, they have guards walking the rooftops with guns. AR-15s, I think they were. I'm not 100% sure the model and make, but the reality was they had firearms, and it took them a second to process what is actually going on. And when they realized uh, through I'm sure certain channels, then they saw for themselves the violence that was taking place. They started to shoot and just shoot randomly in the yard. There was no warning shot. They just shot towards the ground. I'm sure they shot at people. I didn't hear of anybody getting shot per se, but they just started shooting. And I remember I was in the middle of the yard at the time when this all took place. Me and a group of guys I was walking with, and of course we all jumped on the ground immediately as you're instructed you should do, unless you want to get shot because they're going to think you're part of the mayhem that's unfolding around you. So I remember jumping in. I immediately took to the ground. I had my hands like this, and I was face down on the ground, and I just remember it was like 90, 95 degrees that day, and the asphalt was blazing hot. My skin, I remember my arms in particular, they started to burn because I was literally face down on the concrete, and they just kept shooting. And this went on for like what seemed an eternity. I'm sure it was only like 20, 30 seconds, but it seemed a lot longer than that. And then obviously they tried to restore order in a sense, and then the complete disorder and chaos that was rampant. And what I was told from that, after the fact, the aftermath of that was obvious. I mean, they were going to do a tremendous lockdown, which they did. It was like a 2.5 week lockdown. We were all locked in cells. I mean, it took maybe 3, 4 hours to get everybody out of the yard, and we were locked down. And the quality of the life that you had then. I mean, you were done. I mean, we got served our little bags 2, 3 times a day. You get little bag foods and maybe a wet bologna and cheese sandwich in there if you were, brave enough and courageous enough to actually eat it. I never ate any of it because I knew what the guards would have done. Especially now, under that circumstances, they would spit on the food and who knows what else. I mean, it was I would never trust it, so I would never even eat it. I was thankful enough at that time to have food in my small locker that I had in my cell, so I had sustenance, so I survived that lockdown, and I would do my daily grind inside while the lockdown ensued. I would work out, I would do my reading, I would do my study, I would wear my headphones constantly so I can try to drown out the cacophony and the noise that's constant around me, and just dealt with the lockdown in general. But that was one of the wildest and craziest things that I saw, as far as it just how methodical it was. I mean, it was so planned and coordinated in such a fashion that it was impressive in a sense because I never saw anything like that. I mean, usually it's prisoner on prisoner violence as far as the riots. I mean, I've never heard of anything other than that, and it's the sad reality of that life that you bore witness to the violence I was just speaking about on a constant loop. But when it was directed at the guards, and then a lot of people say, what did that stem from, and why did they do that, and lo and behold, a lot of it was I basically caused because the guards allegedly beaten were directing their wrath at this particular gang because of the extent of violence that they blamed that the gang was affiliated with. So they would attack them. They'd have their beat down squads or whatever, and this just escalated. And then it was finally popped off where they had this. general mass riot, an attack on the prison guards. Violence as a standard mean of operation inside the prison system is something that is an ongoing thing. It's something that a lot of people are very curious about, rightfully so. And I'm committed to talking about my experiences throughout my videos. And if anyone who has interest in what I have to say or has comments, please share them. I'm open for any type of general discussion about anything. No topic is off the table when it comes to the prison system and my experiences within the prison system. So hit me up, share this video among the many others I have made available on my channel. And until next time, go with the gods and persevere.